Hey, what's up? Abby here, and welcome to my Unholy DK BfA pre-patch talent guide, and a couple little other miscellaneous tips and guides in here, but mostly we're going to be going over certain talents and why you run them, and basically the crux of this video is to sim it, but here is what you see a lot of people running, so this is probably what's going to be best for you, but let's get into it. So, of course, with the pre-patch, the talent tree was changed up a little bit. Not a heavy change like some other specs were, but a decent amount of changing around. The 100 talents are all completely different, and some have switched their rows. Clawing Shadows used to be in a different row. Ebon Fever and Bursting Swords used to be in a different row. In fact, the Claws was all the way in the 90 row. I mean, things have changed around a decent amount. But the spec still plays relatively the same. It's all about popping wounds, keeping up your globals, and not overcapping runic power, very similar to how it's always worked throughout Legion. So let's get into it. The 56 tier, you can see a majority of people running Clawing Shadows. The simple reason for you seeing people run this is just it's simming the highest, but there are some other reasons why it has benefits that the other two talents don't, such as the ability to maintain uptime on the target through your own personal abilities as opposed to your pet. With a key ability. Scourge Strike is a key ability in your kit. It allows you to pop Festering Wounds, thus generating a decent amount of runic power, and also maintaining that exchange of applying wounds and bursting them. So the ability to do this when you're away from the target, which is very beneficial in certain bosses. In Antares currently, and even in Mythic Plus, is very beneficial. Some bosses I can name are like Garothi, Worldbreaker's Eradication, Agrimar's Searing Tempest, if you have a Soul Blight on Argus, just some off the top of my head that I can think of this being very beneficial on. And All Will Serve, you would think that this would do the same thing, allow you to maintain uptime while being away, but it doesn't, because currently the Risen Skulker that is summoned with All Will Serve doesn't continue attacking when you stop attacking. Therefore, the fall of this talent is the benefit of Clawing Shadows, where Clawing Shadows allows you to maintain uptime, All Will Serve does not. Still a phenomenal talent. You might see this simming higher for you personally. However, if it does, and it's pretty close, I implore you to try out Clawing Shadows just because it offers a more comfortable play style, if that makes sense. Infected Claws is great in AoE and cleave situations. I implore you to try it out in Mythic Plus because it allows you to, instead of having to apply Festering Wounds to each target through your own Festering Strike and relying on Pestilence to give you wounds because it's better spent the 90 talent into Epidemic in Mythic Plus, this allows your ghoul to do the job for you at a decent rate. Of course, when your ghoul is under the effects of Dark Transformation, it gets a Frontal Cone. That Frontal Cone applies Infected Claws to each target it hits at a 30% rate, making this a very strong talent. Then you just throw down your Death and Decay, and it pops multiple wounds. And they all cleave off each other if you're running Bursting Swords. This is just a great talent to synergize with Bursting Swords and Mythic Plus. Next up, we have the 57 tier. The 57 tier is pretty cut and dry. You're going to see a majority of people running Ebon Fever, and not only that, you're most likely going to see your sims favoring Ebon Fever. So the reason for this is it just does a ton of damage. It really does. Bursting Swords is still a great talent. As I mentioned before, it's very good when paired up in Infected Claws for AoE situations. That combo between Infected Claws, Bursting Swords, and Death and Decay is a great synergy, and I do recommend you try that out in Mythic Plus. What I really recommend is running Soul of the Deathlord and just running these two talents in Mythic Plus or AoE situations. They're very good when paired up with each other through that ring, which is still a very powerful ring for AoE and Mythic Plus. Unholy Blight is a really cool talent and offers a pretty heavy dot in AoE. However, these other two talents currently will usually outclass it, but it is a really cool talent, and you can get away with it for leveling and world questing or open world content. However, it just doesn't pair up to the other two in Mythic Plus or raids. So not really one you want to play around with. In the 58 tier, I'm usually running Asphyxiate for the same reason that I would run it if I'm running Frost. It's another way to proc Sephu's Secret when your Death Grip is on cooldown. So, of course, Sephu's Secret being a 30-second cooldown on the proc, and Death Grip is a 25-second cooldown. So let's say I have to grip something off CD. I mean, it might not be up again for when Sephuz comes off cooldown. It won't be if I'm gripping off cooldown. This is just another way to do it besides the interrupt and the Death Grip. It's just a nice thing. Let's say I maybe have to save Death Grip for something else, and I can't use my my Death Grip in order to proc Sephuz. This is a nice alternative, so it's a pretty cool talent. The others have their own benefits, so play whatever you want, but I just like running Asphyxiate because Sephuz is one of the best legendaries for Unholy right now. Now we'll move on to the 60 tier. The 60 tier is pretty interesting because all these talents look good on paper, but one of them is pretty ridiculous right now, and that's Soul Reaper. Very powerful talent. Not only does it have the versatility of being able to give you some haste, generating runes, and dealing some damage, but just the sheer fact that it generates 2 runes makes it fairly powerful. It does a good amount of damage, 2.1k for me right now. It does do a decent chunk. And of course, as I mentioned before, the versatility of being able to apply this to a target that is about to die, maybe an ad or something, and gaining a little bit of haste is very strong, very beneficial, and just a solid talent. Very good. Not as good as it was in WoD and before, and it's not a 100 talent anymore, so obviously it's not as good as it was. It was pretty crazy compared to this as a 100 talent, but of course the Dark Arbiter later took over, but still a great talent. Harbinger, you won't see people running this. It's just not that good. Even when paired up with Summon Gargoyle, it's just really not that good at all. So it was great as an artifact trait because we didn't have to sacrifice anything for it, but now it's just not great anymore. Pestilent Pustules, this received, in my opinion, a pretty heavy nerf, whereas before it was guaranteed every 8 wounds, now it's a chance on every wound and a low chance 10%, and it's not even a guaranteed rune of corruption, which is basically a guaranteed rune, but not as immediate as what the others are, or what the other Pestilent Pustules was. Still a fairly good talent, but Soul Reaper is just better, honestly. Next up, we have our 75 tier. Run whatever you want in this tier. I like Death Pact and Wraithwalk, and not a big fan of Spell Eater, but run whatever you want. Then we have the 90 tier. For single target, you're going to be running Pestilence. However, it's not really required for absolutely maximizing your DPS to drop Death and Decay. If you really do want to push that little bit of extra damage and you know that the boss is not going to move, then you're going to want to throw down your Death and Decay. It's a very small increase to use Death and Decay with Pestilence over just spending that rune elsewhere, such as more Clawing Shadows or Scourge Strikes. So you're not really missing out on a lot by not using Death and Decay. However, if, let's say, you're on a boss like Garothi or Varamathras that you know is just not going to move, then you can throw down your Death and Decay pretty comfortably whenever you feel like it, and it will increase your damage by a little, not a lot. For AoE situations, it's pretty comfortable that Epidemic is the choice. In Mythic Plus, this is a phenomenal talent. In general AoE, it's great on-demand talent that just offers you a runic power AoE dump that we have not had in Legion, which is super nice. Frost got the same thing in Glacial Advance. However, Epidemic does not have a cooldown, which makes it a little bit better. It plays off of a very strong ability, of course, Virulent Plague or Outbreak, which plays off a very strong spell, which is Virulent Plague. Just really great. Love it. It makes this is just very powerful. Makes Unholy's AoE kit very strong. But not only that, what really puts over top is the more targets you have, the stronger this gets. So very, very nice. It just scales exponentially because each target is cleaving off of each other. So very strong. 100 talent's pretty cut and dry. Unholy Frenzy right now. You may find that Army of the Damned is simming higher. However, pets are over simming. I don't know if that's fixed as of me making this video. However, if that is fixed, then you're probably going to be finding Unholy Frenzy simming way higher than the other two. I personally, even if the others are simming higher, I think Unholy Frenzy offers a smoother playstyle than the others. Anything that gives a decent chunk of haste and allows you to get rid of useless, or not useless, but annoying buttons to hit in your abilities. I'm talking about Festering Strike here, of course. Then I really like that. I like that kind of ability. Army of the Damned, we know what it does. It, of course, loses value if that doesn't mean you get an extra army in the fight, which is happening in a lot of the Mythic and Heroic Antaros fights currently. The only ones that are really long enough to see this get play is like Coven, Agrimar, and Argus, and maybe like Iminar in there. But really the other fights, they're so short now because our damage is so high in comparison to what it was during progression, that even though this bumps your army down to like a 3.5 minute cooldown, that might not even give you another army in the fight. The Apocalypse one is okay, but it's really what you want from this is the extra army, and it might not even give that to you. Unholy Frenzy, you know you're going to get it on pull, you know you're going to get another. There's no fight that lasts 1.5 minutes right now. So just a solid ability. Summon Gargoyle, not that good anymore. However, you can get the Glyph to turn this into an Arbiter if you really want to play that build again and run that with the shoulders, and now you have a pretty solid build. Now, Legendaries, there's a pretty vast array of Legendaries you should be playing around with or using. One of the constant Legendaries in that list is Coldheart. Solid Legendary, has been since it came out in Legion. And it's just really, really damn good. You just want to use it every time you get 20 stacks. There's nothing to pair it up with like Frost, where you want to pair it up with the End of Pillar. None of that with this. Just use it off cooldown and you're set. And for other Legendaries, the Rings, Sephu's Secret, and Uvanamor, the Unbeautiful are both very solid rings. The Belt Draugrs is good. The Crucible Ring is good. Just gives you a solid 2% increased damage. As you can see, I don't even have it socketed because I'm not going to use it. I'd rather just run a Sephu's with this, where I gain the extra benefit of interrupting or gripping a target, giving me a mini Bloodlust. I just like that more. Some other Legendaries that are good, let me see if I can find them. Soul Deathlord, great, and Mythic Plus. I mean, there's just a more vast array of Legendaries that are useful now, that we are not running Shoulders and Chest as the locked-in Legendaries for Unholy anymore. So, because Shoulders have taken a little bit of hit, because Dark Arbiter is no longer the go-to builds, we have kind of opened up the Legendary field for Unholy. So, it's pretty solid. Obviously, an Auto Attack Ring is very, very strong for basically every melee class, so try to get yourself one of these. And for Trinkets, any of the damage proc Trinkets, Gorshlak's Legacy, Tony's Promise, Seeping Scourgewing, and the Khazgrat Trinket are basically the go-to ones right now. But again, as I said with everything else in this video and my Frost video, sim yourself. Don't take anything that I say verbatim. Don't just run this build because I have it up here. Sim all these combinations to make sure that what you have is best for you. If you have any questions, post them down below, and I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one.